This is the Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's family.
Well, if there's one man that has his finger on the pulse of sports all over America, all over the Valley, it's our next guest, Dave Pasch. He actually went out of town recently. Things kind of calmed down. He comes back to town. Kyler Murray signs his extension. The Durant thing's heating up. The voice of the Arizona Cardinals, ESPN play-by-play announcer, Dave Pasch joins us now on the Extra Point Podcast. First of all, did you get some time away, some much-needed time away? Because I think you've been on every telecast for the past 700 days that I've watched.
Yeah, you and I were texting a little bit while I was overseas in Italy. You know, when you go to most places in the United States for work that other people might go to for vacation, it doesn't feel like vacation. So we got out of the country for a little bit, and yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind. I got back the other night at like 11 o'clock and had a podcast with Cliff Kingsbury scheduled for the next day. And of course, all the Kyler stuff happened and it worked out. But I told Cliff when we started, I'm like, you know what, man, I'm completely delirious with jet lag. So this is either going to be the worst podcast ever or maybe the best. And it just happened that the Kyler news came out.
So when does it drop and when can we hear it?
So it's already out. So it dropped Thursday, I believe. It's the Dave Pasch podcast, which is something that I started last year with the Arizona Cardinals. And it's not strictly, Mark, a Cardinals podcast, although, you know, most of the guests are Cardinals or NFL related, but James Jones has been on, Jeff Van Gundy, Mikal Bridges, Frank Caliendo, James Roday, who's an actor, a friend of mine. And so, you know, we try to do a lot of different things, bring it back to the Cardinals. JJ Watt's been on, Zach Ertz, and Cliff has now been on twice. And obviously the timing of getting Cliff on before camp with the Kyler Murray news was great. And he obviously had a lot of great things to say about Kyler. As you would imagine, the two are connected now for a long, long time.
Yeah, I think Cliff said before they broke for summer camp just how much a shot of good energy that was going to bring into the organization. How do you feel about just the energy overall of getting this done and now the Cardinals can go to camp and that question has been answered?
Well, I think it's big, Mark. Look, this was inevitable. It was going to happen. The Cardinals really had no choice. I mean, what's your alternative? Your alternative isn't good. So you've got a player that, while not a perfect player, has the skill set to lead you to multiple championships and has shown a lot of progress. You know, people wanted to see more out of him as a leader, and I think we've seen that. Again, he's still got room to grow there. He's admitted that. And so when you have a player that is as rare as Kyler is, you don't look around for other options when the other options aren't better. I mean, you're not going to give a player money, you know, because, you know, he's got a smile on his face all the time. Or maybe better put, you're not going to pay a guy $200 million because sometimes he's a little grouchy. So I think the Cardinals are in a position where they knew that they had to do it. They have a player that's talented enough. And I give Kyler credit. You know, he came to some of the mini camps when he didn't need to. He wasn't under contract. But the deal was going to get done. It was a matter of when, not if.
I would imagine the Hail Murray throw against Buffalo is maybe your favorite call. But what is it like calling him playing football compared to other quarterbacks and some of the things he could do?
Good question. Really good question. You know, I'm sure it's very similar for Mitch Holthus calling Chiefs games when you're doing, you know, Patrick Mahomes. With a guy like Mahomes or Kyler Murray, you could be witness to something you may never see again. And you don't know when it's going to happen. You know, obviously doing a lot of NBA games, I've been doing NBA for, I think, 17 years now at ESPN. So that's a good part of LeBron's career. And, you know, I've seen, again, a lot of things he's done where I remember doing a playoff game when he was with Miami and they're playing Charlotte in the playoffs and LeBron dunks. And while he's dunking, he stares down Michael Jordan, the owner of, at the time, the Bobcats. You know, how many guys are going to do that? And Kyler has, you know, a swagger, has obviously, you know, the play like against Tennessee, the first game of the season where he's rolling right, throws back across his body, a perfect dart to DeAndre Hopkins, who gets his feet down in the back of the end zone. He makes the ordinary extraordinary, which for a broadcaster you live for. And again, I think it's sometimes you just don't know when it's going to happen. And when it does, you're like, whoa, I haven't seen that. And I don't know if I'll ever see that again. So you better not mess up the call if you're me.
Well, yeah, how much have you seen him grow since the day he was drafted, 3 years ago? And what do you think needs to happen? So, two-part question here to have the Cardinals knocking at the door to the Super Bowl and hoist the championship trophy here in the Valley of the Sun.
Well, I don't think there's any question he's taken steps each year. I don't think the Cardinals would have improved their winning total, and his numbers would keep getting better if he wasn't improving. And I think last year, the time off because of the injury, not the injury itself, but the time away, when you start as hot as he did, and he was an MVP candidate, the team's at the top of the NFL standings, you get hurt, and now you miss practice time. You miss those mental reps, you miss time with your teammates, and you're already late in the season. Now you got to quickly, when you get healthy, ratchet it back up and somehow find that magic again. I just don't think he ever recovered, not from the injury, but from the time away. And look, he made the playoffs. He didn't play well in the playoff game. So the next step is to play better in the playoffs and win a playoff game. And, I think with bringing Colt McCoy back, the coaching staff pretty much remaining intact, going out and getting his best friend in a trade in Hollywood Brown. And you don't have DeAndre Hopkins, but that's 6 games. You've got him for 11. Everybody's talking about the 6 he's going to miss. Yeah, but you got him for 11, and then you got him for a postseason. So you've helped him out with weapons. And I think if he just continues to grow and embraces the grind that you have to be a Tom Brady, then I think you could have something special here for a long time.
And we were all kind of prepared for the drama, the Kyler's contract. Will Rodney Hudson report? It seems like those two things have been put to bed. So it kind of all the white hot spotlight with the media focuses on how they're going to figure out what to do without DeAndre Hopkins. Any other glaring issues here on offense that we need like an answer on before opening day?
I don't think so. I think Cliff learned a lot, and he talked on the podcast about some of the things he could have done differently. I think the timing of when they lost Hopkins, it was a big adjustment that late in the season because you didn't have time to prepare for it. He's gone. All of a sudden, you got to fix your offense, but you can't completely change your offense. And I think he was kind of caught in between. They tried to roll with what they had, and it didn't work. Now, at least you got time to prepare for what your offense is going to look like without him. And I think you'll see a lot of different people at that position, including Zach Ertz at that X position. You've got a pretty good group at running back. Your offensive line is back. Rodney Hudson got really banged up last year. So at least he's back now. Can you get one more year out of him? And, Justin Pugh played some center in the summer. So if Rodney Hudson can't, at least you've got enough depth where you can slide Pugh down to center. And I think you're pretty good. If Max Williams, he's going to be on PUP, but with the drafting of McBride, I mean, they've got a lot of weapons. I think probably the biggest question marks are on defense. Can the young guys like Simmons and Zaven Collins grow? But I think on offense, they got a chance to be among the best in the NFL. I mean, they should be, just looking at the roster.
And yeah, on defense with Simmons and Collins, is that the number one concern? You also look at pass rush, and you look at cover corner, especially with the tragic loss of Gladney there at corner. Are we going to have the Cardinals kind of outscore teams here in the early going, which might be a pretty tall task against the Kansas City Chiefs week 1 to try to let this defense find itself?
Yeah, I mean, the defense played so well last year. There were times at the end of the season they weren't as good, but the offense really struggled the second half of the season. And the defense, at times kept them in games. And I think, Chandler Jones obviously is a big loss, but, can you find a way where you make up those sack numbers? A bunch of his sacks came early on. I'm not saying he didn't have a great year, but, can you get a little bit more out of everybody else? And, linebacker, obviously, you got 2 first-round picks there. It's time for Isaiah Simmons to take the next step. He played better last year. Zaven Collins didn't have a great year. It was a transition for him. You mentioned the tragic loss of Jeff Gladney. I mean, he was going to be a factor. They were counting on him, really to be a starter. So that's a big loss. I think your safety position is among the best in the league. So you've got some holes some places, but you're really strong in other places. I do think the biggest thing is just your sack numbers. Where are you going to get, even if you don't get sacks, your pressures, where are you going to get those from?
And I look at, okay, Hopkins, you're just kind of trying to survive those first couple weeks, and with the schedule the way it looks daunting. I really have no idea what this team's record is going to look like this year. If you put pencil to paper and tried to map out what the roadmap looks like to the playoffs?
It's hard, right? The NFL, the beauty of the NFL is you may look at a schedule now and say, what a tough schedule. And then the year starts and a team that was supposed to be great isn't, or they get off to a bad start, or, you get surprised and you play a team that wasn't supposed to be good and all of a sudden is rolling. It's so hard to look at the schedule. I never do that. I never say, wow, what a tough schedule, because you just don't know. Could be, may not be. But one thing's for sure, they're still in a tough division. So you got San Francisco and the Rams twice, even without Russell Wilson, going to Seattle, even though the Cardinals have over the years had success there, it's not easy. And then having Patrick Mahomes on your schedule and Tom Brady on your schedule, I think they should be a playoff team. And again, I have no reason to believe otherwise. I think that they're in better shape than they were last year. I think what they went through to happen 3 years in a row in terms of not being as good in the second half as you were in the first, I don't see that happen. I think they're going to come out strong. I think they're playing with a little bit of a chip too. Well, that's cliche, Mark, but I think they kind of, I don't think they mind the fact that people are saying that I can't believe they gave Cliff the extension. I can't believe they gave Kyler Murray the extension. Look what they did the second half of the season. Look how bad they were in the playoffs. They weren't good in the playoffs, but maybe that motivates them. I don't think, money, somebody asked today, like, well, what about money? What's that going to do? Well, Kyler Murray had money at a young age, right? He got all his money from the Oakland A's. At one point, he was making more than Lincoln Riley when he was playing for him at Oklahoma. So I think I don't think that's going to be an issue of like Kyler all of a sudden gets his contract and he's going to shut it down. I don't see that happening.
No, the love for football. I like that he said that today. And speaking of schedules here and I guess quarterbacks making more money than their head coach as we transition here. What's your schedule look like the first couple weeks of the college football season?
We don't know yet. I assume we'll find out here in the next couple weeks. I just got back from vacation, so I'm still trying to enjoy the last week or so before camp kicks off and then dive into college. But we'll know soon what we're doing the first couple games.
What was your reaction to the whole Pac-12 breaking apart, USC, UCLA joining the Big Ten, and let the chaos ensue here?
Well, Bill Walton will not return my texts or phone calls, but he wasn't really doing that anyway before UCLA left the Big Ten. Bill is always saying that the Pac-12 is not a truck stop conference. Well, he may end up doing a game at Rutgers at some point if he ends up doing Big Ten games. I was shocked like everybody else, didn't see it coming. What happens next to the Pac-12? Who knows? I don't know that anybody really knows what's going to happen next. I think the only thing that's clear is we're moving towards a system where you're going to have fewer power conferences. The Big 12 losing Oklahoma and Texas, what happens there and what happens with the Pac-12. The ACC, it's going to be interesting with the ACC. There's schools there that try to jump to the SEC, and then what happens with the ACC? There's still it's such a guessing game with what's next, what's going to happen next. But the SEC and the Big Ten are only going to get stronger, I think.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see guys like yourself try to do an open and say, today's a Big 10 showdown, a Big 12. Where are we? Who's playing?
Yeah, hey, right. It's, who even knows what the conferences are going to be called in a few years if this keeps going down this road.
Right. Well, we're glad that we have you to sort it out for us. And I would be remiss without asking an NBA question, because the other part of your job there and the Kevin Durant thing, of course, was so much there was so much enthusiasm for it. And it seems like maybe they got to get Kyrie to LA for Durant to come here, and it's being held up by LeBron wanting to play with Bronny, and there's a million different permutations there. So as you kind of look at it, do you have a feeling of which NBA team Kevin Durant will suit up for on opening night come this fall?
No, I don't. I to your point, I think there's still a path for him to end up in Phoenix. It sounds like there's a lot that has to happen. But no, it just sounds like he won't be in Brooklyn. But I think if the Suns can get him, people are saying, well, what if they have to give up player X? As long as you don't have to give up Devin Booker, if you get Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, I'm not sure, what else you really need. I mean, Brooklyn had Kyrie, Harden, and Durant at one point, but everywhere else they were old and they were slow. And that isn't coming from me. I was told that by several people in the Nets organization. Like, hey, we got these 3 guys, but we're old and slow in a lot of other positions. And you just look at the roster. I think James Jones pretty smart. So if there's a way to get Kevin Durant, I think he's going to find a way while keeping a second unit that's still pretty good. He's not going to give up everything just to get Durant and have absolutely nothing but veterans behind him who can't, make it through a playoff series.
Yeah, and it seems like some of the signings earlier in the offseason was to prepare for that. I know your time is precious as you were spending time with your family, and I like your beard, by the way. We should let that one go the entire fall here and see what we end up with. Best meal you had while traveling abroad?
Oh my goodness, what we had probably. We were there for like a month, man. We didn't really have a bad meal. I did have one time. I don't know if you ever heard of a city called Matera. If you have seen the new James Bond movie, the first like 20 minutes of the movie is filmed in Matera. It's an The Passion of the Christ was filmed there. It's an unbelievable city. But I did. So a lot of the city looks like it's carved out of rocks and caves. And I did taste some pasta there that tasted like it was made out of clay. That was probably the only bad meal, though. Everything else, man, was spectacular.
Did you share communion there and have some good Italian wine?
Oh yeah. We had some good Italian wine. No question. It's hard not to. I mean, it's just part of the culture, man. It's there at breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Breakfast wine?
No, I didn't have it for breakfast. I'm just saying it was there. It was available. No, I did not have it at breakfast. No.
Did anybody recognize you from the many television broadcasts that you've appeared on while you were walking the streets in Italy?
No. Heck no. I don't know. No.
Not even like you're the guy with Walton and Wolfley. No.
No, not in Italy. No, I don't know how much late night college basketball they're watching or how many Cardinal games they're listening to over in Italy, but which was fine. It's not that I get recognized much here anyway, so I was used to it.
Well, you're always on the TV every time we turn on and doing some good things in the community. So I guess last question here is we talked during COVID and you were trying to help some people out by getting some bills paid and people that were going through a hard time. So how did that all end up? What was the final total of that, or how many people did you end up helping?
I don't know the number, Mark. I think that the thing that I was appreciative of the most was that I had a lot of friends and colleagues, even people that were colleagues that I really didn't know that well, that reached out saying, hey, I want to help as well. So I was able to kind of connect someone with somebody else who really needed help. So that was cool to see. And there were a lot of people that were like, I don't want it public, but hey, I'd like to help out. So just tell me what to do. That was really cool. So, again, I don't know the numbers or how many people. I just know that, God blessed it. And, when he's in it, you just kind of try to stay out of the way. And so, to not mess it up. So, yeah, it was just kind of cool to see a lot of people coming forward and saying, hey, I'd like to help, and being able to connect people with others that really needed help. So,
well, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing some of your time with us today. And we look forward to seeing you out of training camp very soon.
Yep. Anytime.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.